Hi, this is Melanie Koss, professor of children's and young adult literature, and I'll be joining you soon on the Book of Life podcast. I'd like to dedicate this episode to my dad, who I lost to Alzheimer's earlier this year. He was my biggest cheerleader. He encouraged my love of reading. He supported me every step of the way as I followed my dream to become a children's literature professor. He also instilled in me this really deep sense of Jewish pride. And I know he would be so proud to see me championing Jewish books. So this one is for you, Daddy.
This is The Book of Life, a podcast about Jewish kidlit. I'm Heidi Rabinowitz. It's January, and that means it's Book Award season. The Sidney Taylor Book Awards are presented to the best Jewish children's and teen books by the Association of Jewish Libraries each year. They're sponsored by Jo Taylor Marshall, daughter of the author Sidney Taylor, who created the beloved Olive Kind Family series. The Olive Kind Family books were the first mainstream books with Jewish characters. Check out the Sidney Taylor portal on the AJL website to learn about the author, her books, and the award named in her memory. The 2026 Sidney Taylor Book Award winners were announced at the American Library Association's Youth Media Awards press conference on January 26, 2026. You're about to hear my exclusive interview with Melanie Koss, chair of this year's Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee. Check the show notes for a list of the winning titles and links to more about the award. And if you're a paid subscriber to the Book of Life Substack, watch your email for the new Share Your Shelf bonus segment that Melanie and I recorded just for you. Now, let's hear about this year's winners. Melanie Koss, welcome to the Book of Life.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am excited to have you here to reveal to us the winners of the 2026 Sidney Taylor Book Awards. But first, could you please give us a little bit of background about the Sidney Taylor Book Award?
Sure. The Sidney Taylor Book Award was established in 1968 by the Association of Jewish Libraries. It honors Sidney Taylor, who was the author of the Olive Kind family books that so many of us grew up reading and loving. The award is sponsored by Jo Taylor Marshall, who was Sidney Taylor's daughter, and she is so generous to support this award for all of these years.
Okay, so we've got the three age group categories for the Sidney Taylor Book Award. We've got picture books, middle grade, and young adult. So let's start with the gold medalists for all three categories, and then we can move on to honors and notables. So before you reveal the winner in the picture book category, I'm going to tell you my prediction, okay?
Okay.
I think it will be either The Remembering Candle by Alison Goldberg or The Keeper of Stories by Caroline Cusin Pritchard. Both of those books were illustrated by Selena Alco, and her gorgeous art seems very award-worthy. So let's find out if I'm right. Can you please tell us what really did win gold in the picture book category?
Unfortunately, you were not right, although those two books are...
Oh, boo.
Those two books are spectacular, though, and will be showing up on our list.
Oh, good.
But our winner might be a little bit unconventional, but I love it so much. It's Shabbat Shalom, Let's Rest and Reset by Susie Altman.
Yeah, awesome.
It's amazing. I really love this book. It's a board book that introduces Shabbat to the very youngest readers in a way that can really make sense for them. This book explains that Shabbat is different. It's a day for being, not doing. The language is simple, the illustrations are bold and colorful and full of joy. They have fun little details like smiling challah and candlesticks, even a girl whose hair looks like challah loaves, which was a favorite detail of the committee. It just celebrates slowing down and relaxing and enjoying time with family or just being by yourself. But here is what makes it truly special. This is the first board book ever to win a major book award. So that is historic, and it shows how beautifully this book captures the heart of Shabbat, and it captured the hearts of all of the committee members.
Well, I was about to ask you that. I didn't think a board book had ever won Sidney Taylor recognition before. And perhaps, as you say, it's the only board book to ever win any major book award.
Yeah, there have been board books that have won an honor, but this is the first ever to be a winner of any book award, including the Sydney Taylor.
Yeah, I love this book, but I wouldn't have predicted it to win because it's a board book. Jewish board books seem to have just exploded in 2025. My spreadsheet where I track Jewish Kidlit shows 22 board books in 2025 as opposed to 8 in 2024. Can you talk about that?
Board books are a really great way to introduce very young children to different people, different religions, different cultures, different ideas, especially now in this time of increased anti-Semitism. I think it's important for Jewish children and non-Jewish children to humanize the other and to read books that celebrate people from all different walks of life. And I don't think board books are only for babies. I think you can use them with younger children. I think board books have really captured the gamut from religious elements, like we have some that are, I want to get the title of them right, that are my first Tanakh stories that talk about some of the matriarchs and patriarchs of Judaism, as well as some that just incorporate Grover, one of our favorite Sesame Street characters.
I thought that this book did the best job I've maybe ever seen of conveying the whole point of Shabbat rather than just the customs. And so I definitely will be using it with children older than the typical board book age. Let's move on to the middle grade winner. So I thought the strongest book of the year was Max in the Land of Lies by Adam Gidwitz. But because it's a sequel, I don't know if it would win the award. So I'm going to guess that it will either be Benoni by Murray Lowe, who won the Sydney Taylor Gold for her first two novels, Aviva versus the Dybbuk and The Dubious Pranks of Shane D. Goodman, or I would say it might be A World Worth Saving by Kyle Lukoff, because that book did a great job of mixing Jewish folklore with modern issues of trans rights. So now that I've made my predictions, please tell us what book is the winner in the middle grade category.
Well, Heidi, once again, your predictions are close, but are not quite the winner. The winner of the Sydney Taylor middle grade book is Neshama by Marcella Pixley.
Okay, so fantasy remains strong in middle grade. What made Neshama stand out?
First of all, Neshama is a novel in verse, and it just sings here. Every word is crafted in a poetic language that's so readable, and it follows sixth grader Anna. She feels like an outsider everywhere, except with her bubby, who calls her a Shena Neshama, a beautiful soul. Anna sees ghosts, and that puts her at odds with her family members and makes her a target at school, especially for Queen Bee Eden. So the only place that Anna feels safe is Shabbos by the sea with her bubby. And then here's where things get a little bit weird. The ghost of her Aunt Ruthie appears. Aunt Ruthie died at the age of 11. And then Anna learns that Ruthie is an Ibor, a soul that enters a living person to finish unfinished business. So Ruthie asks Anna to let her in, and through poems exchanged between Anna and Ruthie, these family mysteries rise to the surface. And when Bubby's life is in danger, Anna realizes that she's the only one who can protect her family and heal old wounds. And what was so special about this title is just how Jewish life flows through every page, from Yiddish warmth to Shabbat and Havdalah and some Jewish folklore. So the format of the verse novel really worked here and made every word special.
That was a great choice. Let's talk about young adult books. Now, I think the most likely winner is Song of a Blackbird by Maria van Lieshout because it is so immersive. I thought it was nonfiction until I read the endnote. And the artwork is not just gorgeous, it's actually important to the plot. So that's super cool. However, I would prefer the gold to not go to a Holocaust book because the Holocaust has been so overrepresented among past winners. So my pick for winner would be the graphic memoir, I Wish I Didn't Have to Tell You This, by Eugene Yelchin, about his life in the USSR. Now, I've been wrong so far, so let's see if I can keep up my streak of being wrong. So please tell us about the winner in the young adult category.
Well, Heidi, you're 3 for 3.
Woo!
The winner in the young adult category is D.J. Rosenblum Becomes the Goat by Abby White.
Wow. Okay. Another very good book that I did not predict would win.
Surprise! So this one starts with a necklace. A little goat charm that DJ gave her cousin Rachel at her bat mitzvah because Rachel is the goat, the greatest cousin of all time. 4 years later, Rachel dies by an apparent suicide, and DJ can't accept it. She's convinced Rachel was murdered. So when DJ and her mom move to Rachel's town to support her family, DJ dives into her own investigation, and she pulls in new friends that have these crazy tech skills and big personalities. Now, at the same time, it is a fairly standard Jewish book where DJ is preparing for her bat mitzvah, which has been postponed due to her cousin's passing. And she's meeting with Rabbi Flores and wrestling with her Torah portion, which is Acharei Mot, which means after the death, and talks about all of the preparations for Yom Kippur. And that takes on an extra heartbreaking meaning as DJ is grappling with Rachel's loss. And the story is essentially Jewish. There are Shabbat dinners, holidays like Rosh Hashanah and Passover. And what's really powerful about this book is how it explores grief and the search for truth with humor and heart. So it's like part mystery, part coming of age, and it is completely unforgettable.
All right, another excellent choice. You know, it's very funny that the books that I picked are all very strong books, but then there were these other very strong books that actually were chosen by the committee, which is wonderful because it just goes to show there is so much to choose from right now. I think we are in a golden age of Jewish children's literature.
I do think we have an embarrassment of riches, but something that I feel is truly missing are the representation of diverse Jewish voices. You'll notice what's sorely lacking in our list is any Sephardic or Mizrahi representation or representation from non-Ashkenazi groups. I think that's a problem, and it's not because the committee didn't want to honor books with diverse Jewish representation.
Right. The pool is so small. You know, there's just not enough of them yet. I would point out that that has been growing. We definitely are seeing more representation, especially of Sephardic Jews and in illustrations, Jews of color, but not necessarily the authors writing from their own personal knowledge and perspective. We did last year have the picture book winner, a Sephardic book, The Etrog from Across the Sea, although the Sephardic representation was actually pretty subtle, and I think it would be possible to not notice it if you didn't already realize. But yes, you're definitely right about that this is an area that needs to grow. So in addition to the 3 gold medalists, there were also 5 silver medalists, also known as Sidney Taylor Honor Books, and 9 notable books were selected by the committee too, across all 3 age categories. So let's hear about the honor and notable books, and I'd like to ask you to tell us what was special about each one of them. So let's start with the picture books.
So we have 3 picture book honors, and our first one is The Book of Candles, 8 Poems for Hanukkah by Laurel Snyder, illustrated by Leanne Hatch. And The Book of Candles is 8 warm, free verse poems that all link together to tell one main story. And the jewel tone art and the poems mixed together, they just capture Hanukkah at home and away. The first thing that caught my eye when I opened this is the dad blasting Lakshair's wax off the menorah with a hair dryer.
Right.
Which I think just started the book off to connect with everyone, because everyone needs to start Hanukkah getting the old wax out. But what was really special about this book is that it didn't have the familiar Hanukkah trappings that so many books have, like spinning the dreidel and making the latkes. What it was really about was the warmth of lighting a candle and being with family. And it was so modern. It had them rushing home after sunset, after a busy day, to light the menorah with takeout pizza sitting on the floor of the living room. Or when they got a flat tire on the side of the road, they still managed to light the candles by using a banana as a menorah, which there were like 3 books with banana menorahs this year.
Banana menorahs are all the rage.
They're so cool. But, you know, what was also really neat about this is, in addition to the poems, each of the 8 nights had a little factual note that added a little more information. So it was a nice blend of honoring light, family, and all those little holiday moments.
The Book of Candles made so many Best of 2025 lists, including mainstream lists that were not focusing on Jewish books. So that's great.
The next book is one that you had pegged as a possible winner.
Ah.
The Keeper of Stories by Caroline Cusin Pritchard, illustrated by Selena Alco. This is such a powerful picture book. It tells the true story of the 1966 fire at the Jewish Theological Seminary Library and the community's extraordinary effort to save all the books. Volunteers formed a human chain to rescue waterlogged volumes. They dried pages with paper towels. And there was a refrain, "Keep our stories alive," that ran through the text. And the text and the illustrations make this parallel between the survival of the books and the resilience of the Jewish people, ending with a reminder of our collective responsibility to protect stories. And the back matter is really important in this book. It includes photos, historical details, and my favorite, there's a letter from a church kindergarten class that raised funds. The other thing that stands out to me with this book is how it highlights Jewish values like Kehila, community, Klal Yisrael, unity, and Tikkun Olam, which is repairing the world. So this book just merged so many things together, and it was informative and just deeply meaningful.
Wonderful. And it's hard to resist a book about books.
100%. And the art is just spectacular. All right. Our third picture book honor is one of my personal favorites, My Body Can by Laura Gell, illustrated by Alexandra Colombo. In this book, there's joyful rhyme and bright, inclusive art that celebrates what every body can do. Ride, climb, spin, march, throw, rest. And it's all inclusive with the children. The page of hiking is a child using a wheelchair. We have children who use hearing aids, a child that has possible alopecia or in treatment, a non-binary child. They're all shining on these pages, and it goes through the Jewish year. So for example, children might spin like a dreidel on Hanukkah, or dance with a Torah on Simchat Torah, or pick the apples and then taste the apples for Rosh Hashanah. But the holidays are never named. They're all inferred from the illustration. So Jewish children can see themselves in their celebrations, but all children can celebrate what their bodies can do. This book is playful, it's universal, but it's deeply rooted in Jewish tradition. And in the back matter, it does invite readers to find each holiday, but also a treasure hunt on fun little details like, can you find a Band-Aid? So this book just radiates joy, diversity, and a sense of belonging. It's just really masterful.
Yes, I adored My Body Can. I was very happy to have it on AJL's Holiday Highlights list, along with the Book of Candles. Like the winner, Shabbat Shalom, Let's Rest and Reset, I think this is a much simpler book than the kind that usually gets Sydney Taylor recognition. So that is very interesting. And, speaking of diverse representation, this was one where the illustrations show Jews of color, Jews of different abilities, like you said, gender representation. So this was a great one for helping to build our library's diverse representation.
So there is one middle grade Sydney Taylor honor book, and it is one that you thought may have been our winner. It's Benoni by Mari Lowe. It's a middle grade fantasy that takes the chosen one idea and gives it a deeply Jewish twist. So Ezra is the Nivchar, the one chosen in his generation to battle, bear with me, the shape-shifting Gur Dinora on the night of his bar mitzvah. And it's a fight meant to keep the world in a state of Benoni, an in-between time where nothing terrible can happen. But as that balance starts to slip, Ezra's life spirals out of control. The perfect child starts falling behind in school. He clashes with his best friend, and he gets pulled into all of this trouble with Arya, who's a foster kid who thrives on chaos. The story is, as is Mari Lowe's talent, steeped in authentic Orthodox Jewish life, and it's so rich with Jewish concepts like the Sanhedrin and just the idea of Benoni woven seamlessly into the fantasy. I think it's really rare to see a book that combines a compelling mystery with a really honest portrayal of Jewish community. And there's a twist ending, which is both surprising and completely earned.
All right. Good for Mari Lowe. She's just hitting it out of the park every time. And it's interesting that she's leaning even harder into fantasy this time, because her books have been fairly realistic up until now.
Our final honor book, we have one young adult honor, and this is one of the 2 Holocaust books on our list, The Rebel Girls of Rome by Jordan Taylor. Some of my favorite books are books with multiple narratives and multiple timelines. This title tells 2 connected narratives from the past and the present. So in the present, Lila, who's a Jewish American college student grieving her mother, travels to Rome with her grandfather Rafa after an email about a long-lost heirloom and a mysterious note. And that trip becomes a journey to uncover what happened to Rafa's sister Bruna, who everyone believed was deported during a Nazi roundup in 1943. But the past narrative shows Bruna in Nazi-occupied Rome. She escaped capture, she joined the resistance, and then she navigates her identity as a queer Jewish woman in a really dangerous time. And together, these threads explore generational memory, survivor's guilt, because Rafa spent his whole life feeling guilty that he survived and his sister didn't, and also just the resilience of Jewish identity. What I think is really special is that this book gives voice to a lesser-known piece of Holocaust history, not only the experience of Jews in Italy, but also of queer people in Italy. And it pairs it with this contemporary story that shows how we are continually shaped by what happened in the past.
Wonderful. All right. So let's talk about the notable books now.
Okay, we have 3 notables in the picture book category. Our first one is Fanny's Big Idea, How Jewish Book Week Was Born by Richard Michelson, illustrated by Alyssa Russell. So this book introduces us to Fanny Goldstein. She's a Jewish immigrant who fled persecution in Russia and built this remarkable life in Boston. She became the first Jewish person ever to head a U.S. branch library, and she used that platform to launch Jewish Book Week in 1925, which is a celebration that now has grown into Jewish Book Month. This book really shines in showing how one person's vision can create lasting cultural change. It's deeply Jewish in its emphasis on heritage and learning, but also she worked really hard to celebrate everyone's heritage and to bring people together in libraries in an inclusive manner. So it's ultimately about the power of books and libraries to build bridges between people.
Wonderful. Another book about books. There were a lot of Jewish biographies published in 2025, including another one by Rich Michelson about Louis Brandeis. And last year, he wrote a biography about the life of Sidney Taylor. So thank you, Rich Michelson.
Yes, he is definitely shining light onto so many important people in Jewish history. Our second notable picture book is Finding Forgiveness, a Rosh Hashanah Story by Rebecca Garden-Levington, illustrated by Diana Mayo. This picture book is set during Rosh Hashanah, and it follows 2 sisters who had a fight the night before. This story is told in rhyme, and for me, picture books don't always work in rhyme when they're longer in narrative, and this one really did. It follows the perspective of the older sister, and she's struggling with how to make things right with her little sister as she participates in rituals, such as hearing the shofar and performing tashlich. So she's reflecting on her feelings and her mistakes and what forgiveness really means. The illustrations are gorgeous, and they show a wonderfully diverse Jewish congregation, including a female rabbi. And I think it's really rare to find a children's book that addresses tashlich and the emotional complexity of making amends in a really age-appropriate way.
All right, so we've got a good spread of holiday representation. Now, Finding Forgiveness gives us Rosh Hashanah. We've got Shabbat Shalom, Let's Rest and Reset, the Book of Candles for Hanukkah. It's excellent to see a holiday that is very important within Judaism, but less represented in publishing being recognized.
Our final notable picture book is The Remembering Candle by Alison Goldberg, illustrated by Selena Alco. This is another one that you highlighted in the beginning as one of your possible picks.
I sure did.
And it's not a holiday book, but it does introduce children to the Jewish tradition of lighting a yahrzeit candle on the anniversary of a loved one's death. So it's told through the voice of a child, and it follows a family as they gather to celebrate and honor their grandpa's memory. And the little sister wants to blow out the candle like a birthday candle, which leads to just a gentle explanation that this candle is meant to burn for 24 hours, which gives the family time to share stories and share memories of Grandpa. The text and the collage-style illustrations weave in this imagery of stars and constellations, which really connected to Grandpa's love of stargazing, and also the idea that memories light up the darkness. The back matter explains Yahrzeit and Jewish mourning traditions, so it's a really rare book that talks about mourning and Yahrzeit. And again, these illustrations depict a multiracial Jewish family, and it models how children can be a part of remembrance in a way that feels hopeful and comforting rather than just really sad.
Well, obviously I loved this book, and as a matter of fact, I've got an interview with the author coming up this spring on the Book of Life.
Ooh, I can't wait to listen to that.
Oh, thank you.
So we have 5 middle grade notable titles, which just shows the breadth and depth of the middle grade category this year. The first one is another one that you mentioned earlier as a possible pick for the winner. And it is another fantasy about conquering demons in Jewish folklore. And that is A World Worth Saving by Kyle Lukoff.
Yay!
Yay! This book is such a powerful ride. It starts with a 14-year-old trans boy who's having a really hard time. His parents didn't take his coming out well, and they drag him to these awful So Sad meetings. So Sad, Save Our Sons and Daughters, which is a conversion therapy group that feels soul-crushing and turns out to be literally soul-crushing because things take a turn that you don't see coming. A meets a golem made of trash who tells him that he's destined to save the world. And at first, A can't imagine being anyone's hero. I mean, he hasn't even managed to pick his own name yet. But as the story unfolds, he learns that even heroes need help. So A and his friends discover that the hatred at So Sad isn't just human prejudice. It's actually fueled by demons, Shadim from Jewish folklore, and they feed on people's pain and bigotry. So in addition to the help of the golem, A also has help from other trans and gender fluid teens. And there's also a rabbi who knows Jewish mythology inside and out. Through all of that help, A fights to save his friends and maybe even the world, all before Yom Kippur ends. So it is intense, hopeful, and deeply Jewish. It weaves ancient myth and ancient Jewish folklore into a story about identity, courage, and community. I could not stop cheering for A and his friends. This is a must-read.
Yes. I actually interviewed Kyle Lukoff in September 2025 on the Book of Life about A World Worth Saving, and it also made the holiday highlights list.
Our next middle grade notable title is our second Holocaust title of the list, and it's The Daughter of Auschwitz, The Girl Who Lived to Tell Her Story by Tova Friedman. And it is a memoir for younger readers. This is adapted from her adult memoir. Tova Friedman was just 4 years old when her family was forced into a ghetto in Poland, and she was only 6 when she was deported to Auschwitz. She's one of the youngest people to survive that death camp. And in this book, she tells her story in a way that feels deeply personal, yet also really accessible. We follow Tova through unimaginable experiences like hiding to survive deportation, surviving starvation, brutality, but yet her mother's quick thinking and courage saved them more than once. She always managed to cling to hope in the darkest of times, and her father miraculously survived too. This story also talks about what happens after the war. The family reunited, they came to America, and Tova faced the challenge then of starting over. She had to learn English, she had to make friends, she had to figure out how to fit in while still holding on to her identity. And what I think is really unique about this book is that it begins and it ends with Tova talking to a new classmate in America. And she tells her new friend her secret, even though she was told to assimilate and not talk about the past. And I think that's something that makes it really accessible to readers, because this whole book really is Tova talking to the reader who is talking to her friend. Shifting gears a little, our next notable title is Right Back at You by Carolyn Mackler. This is a clever and heartfelt kind of time loop story that I personally connected to as a child of the 80s. So it starts in 2023 with Mason. He's a 12-year-old New Yorker. He's having a rough time. His dad is gone for a little while. His mom is drinking too much. He's being bullied at school. So he sees a therapist, and his therapist suggests he write a letter to anybody or nobody as a way to process his feelings. So who does Mason decide to write his letter to? Albert Einstein. So he just hides the letter away in the closet. The letter pops out in Talia's closet in Western Pennsylvania in 1987. All of the 80s references just feel really real and authentic to this 80s child. So Mason and Talia start exchanging letters through this random closet wormhole, and their friendship becomes a lifeline to both of them. So they share family struggles, school drama, even baseball scores, so that Talia can win a bet with her older brother. Talia starts facing some anti-Semitism at school, and when her teacher just brushes it off, she takes action by inviting a Holocaust survivor to speak. And there is a bit of a twist at the end. So this book is powerful and empowering, and I think it sparks conversations about kindness and standing up for what is right, and great 80s references.
Well, last year, a Sydney Taylor Honor went to Finn and Ezra's Bar Mitzvah Time Loop by Josh Levy, so we are continuing this time travel theme. Why do you think there are so many Jewish time travel stories?
I have asked myself that same question because you are right. Last year there were quite a few as well. Maybe it's a way to connect past and present because we do have such intergenerational trauma, but also just intergenerational identity. I don't know. If you have the answer, please share it with me.
No, that's why I asked, but that was a good answer.
We have two more notables in the middle grade category, and they're both contemporary realistic fiction. The first one is Same Page by Ellie Swartz. Now, as someone very interested in censorship and what's going on in our country today, this book really resonated with me. Bess is so excited to be elected class president, and she really wants to make a difference. So what's her big idea? A book vending machine filled with diverse stories so every student can see themselves in the pages. Great idea, right? At first it's exciting, but then the pushback begins. Some parents call certain books dangerous, and leading the charge is the mom of a girl who used to be Bess's friend. So suddenly, Bess finds herself in the middle of a book banning battle that she never expected. And what makes this book so compelling is how real it feels. We're seeing book challenges and bans across the country, and this story gives kids a way to understand what's at stake. And what's also powerful is Bess's Jewish identity is just woven naturally through the story. It's a really great example of casual Jewish representation. Bess wears her Star of David necklace for comfort, and she draws a lot of strength from memories of her Holocaust survivor grandmother, who always reminded her why stories matter and why we can't forget the past.
Well, this is an extremely important issue. Just yesterday, I watched a screening online of the documentary The Librarians about censorship that's going on in the country today. I would not say that that's a film that is aimed at young viewers, so I'm glad that we have these alternative methods to discuss the issue with them through books like Same Page.
I agree. This is one of several books aimed at middle graders about banned books, but this is the first one that incorporates Jewish character, which makes it special to our population. Our final notable title in the middle grade category is The Trouble with Secrets by Naomi Milliner. This one hit a little close to home for me, and let me just say there were a lot of tears. This is an emotional story about family and faith and the weight of secrets. It opens with a scene that immediately grabs you. 12-year-old Becky is searching for a dress for a funeral, so you know something heartbreaking is coming. Then the story shifts from now to before, where we see Becky's close-knit Jewish family and her deep bond with her older sister, Sarah. This is another book where the main character is preparing for her bat mitzvah, but Becky is far more interested in playing the flute, and she dreams of joining the all-county honors band. But her dad says no, so Becky forges a permission slip, creating her first big secret. But then she learns that Sarah has a secret too, and as the chapters alternate between past and present, this tension just builds toward a tragedy that changes everything and is depicted so authentically and realistically on the page. Judaism is central to the story. Becky's father is a rabbi, her mom is active in the synagogue, and Becky struggles with being the rabbi's daughter and following her own passions. It also explores sibling relationships, interfaith relationships, and the consequences of choices.
Well, I was hooked by the image on the cover of the two sisters with their big, bushy, curly Jewish hair that looks like my hair. So that got me before I even opened the cover.
Yeah. Our final title on our list, we have one young adult notable title, and it's Leaving the Station by Jake Maya Arlo. Leaving the Station is this year's rom-com, and it takes place almost entirely on an Amtrak train. So it's a perfect setting for a story about identity and connection. So our main character is Zoe. She boards in New York, and she's heading home to Seattle after a rough first semester at college. She's questioning her future, her relationships, her gender, her sexuality, even if she should follow the path her parents expect her to follow. And on the train, she meets Oakley, who also is leaving New York to return to Washington. She left behind a strict Mormon upbringing to go to New York, and now she is returning to her faith. And as the miles roll by, the two share stories, secrets, and big questions about faith and sexuality and who they even want to be. So the train becomes this liminal space where they can be honest in ways you can't be at home. But as they grow closer, they realize that the journey and the choices that are waiting for them at the end is coming to a close. There's also this whole fun cast of other characters that adds so much to the story, and it really makes me want to take a cross-country train trip. Zoe's Judaism is woven throughout the narrative in a really thoughtful way, because as she talks to Oakley, who's Mormon, Zoe reflects on what being Jewish means to her. Not just beliefs, but that sense of connection to her ancestors and her community. So ultimately, it's a story about self-discovery and, to use a train metaphor, about the courage to step off the track you've always been told to follow and to find your own way.
Well, I really like the work of Jake Maya Arlo. I think my favorite one was her middle grade, The Year My Life Went Down the Toilet. All her books are lesbian rom-coms. I feel like most of the Jewish YA rom-coms recently have been sapphic, which are usually adorable and a lot of fun to read.
And I'm happy to see a lot of LGBTQ plus representation in a lot of Jewish picture books, middle grade and YA.
Yes. Now, it seems that grief is a big topic this year. Two of the golds, Neshama and DJ Rosenblum Becomes the Goat. Two of the notables, The Remembering Candle and The Trouble with Secrets, directly addressing death and loss, not to mention the Holocaust books, which automatically include that. Why do you think this topic is so prevalent this year among the books the committee chose?
I've actually really thought about that as someone who spent quite a bit of the last few years dealing with grief, and I had a hard time getting through a lot of these books. And I think some of it is the thread of intergenerational connection when we think about the memory of a grandparent or a survivor's testimony. But I also think that life can be particularly challenging in today's world, and mental health has been a topic that's come up in conversation quite a bit. And I think that grief is a natural way of being in the world. We grieve a lot of different things. Perhaps grief is coming through these books as a way for authors and readers to process some really difficult emotions. But I also think another theme that showed through these books is resilience. Because a lot of our characters are navigating perhaps anti-Semitism or prejudice or pressure from their families and friends, and they're finding their voices and their own way in the midst of some of their difficult situations. So we're seeing a lot of Jewish resilience.
And those two themes go hand in hand, grief and resilience. So that's actually really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you already called the winning authors?
We have. We had Zoom calls with all of them. They were thrilled. There were tears. There was a lot of joy. What was interesting is two of them had always dreamed of this day. Susie Altman was so thrilled that a board book was finally recognized. It was truly her dream to see a board book get recognition and to play with the big boys. And Marcella Pixley said that she really thought that Neshama was going to be a book that fell through the cracks. And she was so moved and so touched that it's getting this highest of honors in the Jewish book world. And Abby White with DJ Rosenblum is a debut author, so shock, awe, and surprise.
Wonderful.
I also want to highlight that the Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee did give a Body of Work award this year, and we're giving it posthumously. He passed February 15th, and our Body of Work winner is Uri Shulevitz. He was such a foundational voice in Jewish children's literature. He won the Caldecott Medal in 1969 for The Fool of the World and the Flying Ship, which was an Eastern European fairy tale. And since 1969, the awards keep coming. He wrote Snow, How I Learned Geography, and this past year, one of his titles was The Sky Was My Blanket, which was the story of his uncle surviving the Holocaust. Uri will sorely be missed, and I have to say, I had the honor and delight of sharing the news with his wife, Paula, who I truly hope becomes my adopted bubby. I had the most delightful conversation with her, and truly she is so touched that Uri was honored in this way, and she really thanks all of the Jewish community and all of the readers for reading his stories, honoring his stories, and now this is a way to honor his memory.
That's beautiful and very well deserved.
I agree.
If listeners want to find out more about the Sidney Taylor Book Award or get a list of winners that they can easily print out, where can they find that information?
They can find that information on the Association of Jewish Libraries webpage. Sidney Taylor Book Awards with an S.org takes you directly right to that page on the website.
Right, you don't have to navigate through the whole webpage. In the past several years, the winning authors and illustrators have been part of a Sidney Taylor Book Award blog tour, which is basically a virtual book tour. Is that happening again this year?
It is, and it will be the week of February 9th, so keep an eye out.
Wonderful. It's Tikkun Olam time. What action would you like to call listeners to take to help heal the world?
For my act of Tikkun Olam, I want to invite listeners to help fight anti-Semitism, which is on the rise and deeply concerning, especially in schools and on college campuses. So as a university professor, this is something that I see and I care about deeply. And I work with the Academic Engagement Network to address it. So AEN mobilizes faculty and administrators to counter anti-Semitism, to protect Jewish identity, and to promote education about Israel. And you can learn more and donate at AEN's website, which is academicengagement.org. But another powerful way to make a difference in fighting anti-Semitism is through books. So I invite all readers to share Jewish stories with the kids in your life, with classrooms, with your communities. Because when we humanize Jewish people through stories, they stop being the other, and that makes them harder to hate. And it's something we can all do to create understanding and connection.
That is the perfect answer from the chair of the Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee. I love it. Is there anything else you want to talk about that I haven't thought to ask you?
I just have to say that this year's Sidney Taylor list is absolutely incredible. I really think that it has something for everyone. We've got books for the very youngest readers. We have a ghostly novel in verse. We have rom-coms. We have stories of rituals and remembrances, and also fantasies that blend Jewish folklore with a fight against demons. So it's an incredible list, but I think what ties them all together is just heart. They remind us that stories connect us and help us remember and help us repair the world. And if I might, I'd also really like to thank my amazing committee members, Nat Bension, Ariel Burdoff, Rebecca Greermeyer, Rachel Simon, Cheryl Fox Strausberg, and Elisa Werner. And I cannot neglect to mention Aviva Klein Rosenberg, who is our past chair and my advisor and helped me every step of the way.
Melanie Koss, thank you so much for speaking with me, and Mazel Tov on a job well done with the committee picking excellent titles for this year's Sidney Taylor Book Awards.
Thank you so much for having me on, Heidi. And thank you for all of the work that you do with this podcast, with your blog, highlighting and celebrating Jewish children's and young adult books. For 20 years, I know this is your anniversary year, so can I plug all your merch? Can you tell them where to go to get the 20th anniversary Book of Life podcast merch?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. 2025 was the 20th anniversary of the show. There is merch available. There are like mugs and t-shirts and things like that. I also, for the anniversary, created a freebie download of a miniature book, a little zine that you can print and fold up that tells you some more about the podcast. So you can find all of that on my website or my Substack. So bookoflifepodcast.com or bookoflifepodcast.substack.com. And if you look at the 20th anniversary episode, you'll see the links to all of that. Thank you so much for asking me that.
I just realized that now it's your 21st anniversary because we are in 2026.
Yeah, that's right. The podcast is going to be old enough to drink.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
This is Selena Alco, and I'm the illustrator of The Keeper of Stories. I'll be joining you soon on the Book of Life podcast, and I'd like to dedicate my episode to 3 of my mother's closest friends, Lucy, Mira, and Valerie, who all recently passed away. May their memories be blessings. They were all Jewish women of the book.
This is Caroline Hewson-Pritchard. I'm the author of The Keeper of Stories. I'm so looking forward to our conversation on the Book of Life podcast. And I'd like to dedicate our episode to the people of Minnesota who are resisting fascism and who are standing against ICE attacks on their neighbors and communities. We are so grateful we see you, and thank you for all you're doing every day.
Say hi to Heidi at 561-206-2473 or bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to my newsletter on Substack to join me in growing Jewish joy and shrinking anti-Semitic hate. Get show notes, transcripts, Jewish Kidlit news, and occasional calls to action right in your inbox. Sign up for the newsletter at bookoflifepodcast.substack.com. You can also find the Book of Life on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Want to read the books featured on the show? Buy them through bookshop.org/shop/Book of Life to support the podcast and independent bookstores at the same time. You can also help us out by becoming a monthly supporter through Patreon or making a one-time donation to our home library, the Feldman Children's Library at Congregation B'nai Israel of Boca Raton, Florida. You'll find links for all of that and more at bookoflifepodcast.com. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries, the leading authority on Judaic librarianship, which also sponsors our sister podcast, Nice Jewish Books, a show about Jewish fiction for adults. Learn more about AJL at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.
Six lives, one city, a phone call that will change everything. In Alive and Beating, Rebecca Wolf brings us to Jerusalem just days before Passover, where 6 diverse characters balance family, work, and life-threatening illnesses. After a devastating bus bombing, an organ donation sets off a question that drives the novel: who will get the call that saves their life? Join me on Nice Jewish Books for a conversation with Rebecca Wolf about grief, grit, and the fragility of hope.